Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speak Honest. I am Jen Noble, your go-to relationship coach, and on today's episode, I am so excited to get to talk to a fellow friend, author, colleague, Vivian Meraki. Now, Vivian, she is a parenting expert, y'all. Like, just wait till you hear some of the stuff that she has to say. And she's also a somatic coach. And if you know anything about me, you know I love somatic experiencing, and it is my jam. But she is also the best-selling author of this amazing book called Parenting Through Divorce, The 3 Keys to Building Unshakable Bonds with Your Children. So if you are anyone out there right now and you're listening and you've been through a divorce or you're a parent in any way, or you're just going through any sort of transition and you're wondering, how the hell do I get out on the other side? Then I want you to keep listening. And I want you, Vivian, to say hi, introduce yourself, tell us anything else about you that I missed out on.
Yes, no, I think you did a great job. I am Vivian Meraki, somatic coach. I'm also a human connection speaker, and I just recently wrote that book. And I love to talk about parenting because I think that it touches all of us. We've all been parented. And for those of us who are parents now, that has heavily influenced the way that we parent. But we can choose a different way where we don't have to sacrifice ourselves, which is really common and a very common old, I don't know if that resonates, but from a lot of the previous generations, the way it was handed down is you need how do I say this? Loving your children shows up as self-sacrifice. And I'm here to say it doesn't have to be. And that's what a lot of this book is about, is the way that you can really be there and create that psychological, emotional safety for your children without giving up on yourself as well.
I love that. So I heard you say loving yourself means self-sacrificing. Like that's the old rhetoric that we have in the world, which I think absolutely, especially as a mother, right? Like, do you truly even love your children if you're not sacrificing everything about yourself? But what is the cost of that? Like, what have you seen as a parenting coach that happens when we self-sacrifice all the time?
Yeah. So something that shows up a lot is, and the way that I phrase it often is that we start to disappear, where we start giving up on the things that we want out of that feeling that we have to sacrifice for the people that we love. And so it's in the small things, and then over time it erodes, and then it starts to become the bigger things as well. And before we know it, we wake up, years down the road and realize, wow, is this my life? Is this what I signed up for? What if it's another 10 years of this, 20 years of this, 30 years of this? Is this what I really want? And we feel like, who am I anymore? Who am I if not just, and I use that very carefully, just mother, wife, in some cases it might be husband or spouse, I think is probably the better one. But there's so much to us, especially when we think back to the old dreams that we may have had. And I think, Jen, you would probably relate to this because a lot of times in somatics, we ask the question, what are you longing for? And that to me is the heart of parenting as well, is how do we teach our children to dream and to long for, and also to learn to trust themselves, that they are worth listening to, they're worth being seen, being understood, showing up in the world to do the things that they were meant to do, where only they can do what they do. Eventually, that they'll find out. And I think ultimately that's the message I want to get to parents and the parents that I work with, is that you don't have to self-sacrifice. And in fact, when you start showing up for yourself, you start showing up more for your kids because you have more energy, you've got more love, you've got more compassion, you've got more inspiration, and you're modeling for them a different way of being.
Oh,
and
I
you're
love
permissioning
that.
it.
Yeah. I mean, I know we hear this a lot, right? Like you have to put on your own gas mask before you can put on someone else's. I know it's like this thing that goes around, but it's so true. And at the same time, right, if we're just going to get really real, it can be really difficult to know what is that balance, because a lot of us grew up with quote unquote like selfish parents. So we don't want to become that. What does that even look like? A lot of us grew up with the parents that, went off and did their own thing. And we're trying to break these cycles, right? We're trying to break these chains. And so what do you normally see in this situation? Especially let's talk about mothers. So most of my listeners are women. That's who I predominantly work with in relationships and all of this stuff. And so let's look at that. Like someone's out there and they're listening right now and they're a mother and they're just like, I don't know. I don't want to be selfish. What does that mean? Can you break some of that kind of cycle, that mold for her right now if she's listening?
Can you actually restate that again? You said, I don't want to be selfish. What does selfish look like?
Oh, that's a great question.
What does that mean?
Yeah, you could tell Vivian's a coach because that's like, right? That's the first question you go back with, which is like, what does that mean? And so let's think about this. Let's think in terms of what I'm thinking of, or in terms of some of my clients, I would think selfish looks like putting yourself first. Selfish looks like I really want to, go for a run in the morning, but my son has gymboree. And so I'm going to take him and forget my run. Something little and simple like that, if that makes sense. And it's like these slow ways in which we slowly kind of give less of have less for ourselves as we give more.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think that there's been a conditioning, and women especially, where we are nurturers and we have this idea of what it means to be a good mother. And so there's a practice I do with all of my clients where we go through and start to tease out, like, what were the values and belief systems that we were handed, that we inherited, that we didn't choose or design for ourselves. And that includes the conditioning around motherhood. And so when I think about, I talk a lot about unshakable relationships. And that includes being unshakable with ourselves. And part of, in my opinion, self-trust and confidence is also, I've got my own back. I'm an advocate for me, and I deserve things too. And I think that when we teach our children to show up for themselves and we become an advocate for them, a lot of mothers are really good advocates for their children. And a question that I'll sometimes ask is, okay, so if you're in a situation where it was your child in your shoes, what would you say to them? What would you permission them? What would you want them to choose? Like what would you like to see for them in terms of their future? Would you want to see them sacrifice themselves to that extent? And I think it starts there. And sometimes actually that question and that reframe is so powerful because most mothers kind of have like this moment of, whoa, like if it was my daughter in my position right now, what would I do? And usually it would be very different.
Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful moment for me specifically. So a lot of people know my story, but I divorced about 5 years ago. And one of the big questions that I was asking myself in the moment of trying to decide, what do I do? Right. It wasn't like it was toxic, but it wasn't, abusive. It's that in between of a relationship. You're like, what are we doing? What is this happening here? And I asked myself, is this what I would want for my child? Would I want my child to stay in a relationship arbitrarily just for them? Like, is that what I would want for them? And so as a result, that's when I started thinking. So is that kind of what I hear you saying? Like really ask yourself, what would you want for your child? And then give that to yourself as well.
Exactly. Because you deserve it too.
Yeah.
And there's so much of this that we don't realize. I'll actually tell a very small story. It actually shows in the book. But there's a practice I do with my children where, it's called Something I Love About Me. And it's something that's aiming at celebrating them. It's a gratitude practice, but it's also a bit of an anchor to start helping them to start to tease apart the things that they can acknowledge about themselves. And so I started this practice with my daughter. She was only 4 at the time. And when I asked her, she cried. Like she buried her head in my lap and she couldn't. She shook her head really hard. She couldn't. She was like, I can't think of anything. And, I felt like my co-parent and I through her whole life had been really mindful. We had tried to be very also gender neutral around a lot of, our interactions with her. We tried to be very validating, affirming, all the things. And yet here my 4-year-old could not say even one nice thing about herself, not even one, and crying. Like just all of that. And, I actually did a somatic practice myself and, went in to just try to understand what was coming up for me in that moment, because so much of it was actually resonant in me that reminded me of my younger self, of a young girl when I was little that did not recognize even one good thing about me and what was coming up. And the thing that I think really stood out to me was, when have I modeled this for her? How has she seen this in my life? And the truth of it was that most of my self-care was happening in the weeks that she was at her dad's. And the times that I had them over, I would actually schedule my schedule in a way that I would create so much space for them. I'm not necessarily setting a lot of hard boundaries around time and space because I try to do a lot of my work and extra work in the off weeks, And a lot of times when it came to things that I enjoyed, I would do those in the off weeks. So if I had them, it's like, oh, let's have your favorite meal, or have, we're going to go to this place that you love going. And it was all about the kids. And yet it was interesting because I shifted for about 2 days. I mean, I shifted forever, but for 2 days, I was really focused on it. And I started to celebrate me. So I started to come in. So instead of only, oh, how was your day at school? I'd also say, oh, I want to hear about my day at work. This is something that happened for me. This is something that I did. Oh, this is something I'm really proud of. Or I really want to make, tonight we're having this because it's my favorite meal. Like just those little things like that, or celebrating like, oh, like we played a game together. Oh, wow. Like I think I'm really good at puzzles because X, Y, Z. And so it was interesting. And I say 2 days because that's all it took. Where on the 3rd day, I tried to do this practice with her again. Something I love about me. Let's try. And she was open to it. and she needed a little bit of support. So, initially I said something I liked about me, and then I said something I liked about her, and then I opened it up for her, and she was able to do it. And so it really showed to me the power of modeling and what that looks like, and that our children can sometimes be a mirror for us. So that's a reason why I also think and I advocate for our own self-advocacy in choosing us, for them to see, oh, this is how mommy takes care of herself. This is how mommy stands up for herself. This is how mommy lives for also her. And she's got this other identity that's not just mommy, but also, my case, Vivian.
Right.
Jen, right? Like
Oh,
the bigger.
that's so powerful, because you really hit on something that I think is a unique situation that happens with divorced parents, which is, it's one thing to be a self-sacrificing mother when you're in, just a heteronormative relationship and all of that stuff, and societally normal, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden you get divorced, and that mom guilt rackets up 20 times over. And so you brought something up that made my brain start thinking of like, shit, I need to start being a little like more selfish around my son to showcase to him. He's 14 now. And it's really, like you said, it's not to just be selfish. It's actually to showcase to them that look what we can do for ourselves. So like, for example, actually just today, my son's off school. I have work at home. I have this podcast. I have to go to physical therapy. I have work elsewhere later. And so I'm like going through the schedule with him. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I shouldn't have done this on a day when I have him. And now you made me realize, no, this is what it's about, Jen. Like, we need to still live our lives, don't we?
Yeah.
We still need to have all this. Everything can't just shut down when they come around. Now, of course, like everything, there's a balance, because at the same time, again, I'm just reminded of clients and my own personal stories of times when my parents were just never there. And so it's no wonder we want to give back to our children so much more than we ever got. And I think that's a beautiful thing. We just want to be careful, don't we?
Yeah. It's about finding that balance, like you said. And every family is different. Every person, they will know what's best for them and their kids. But it's good. Like, I think it's good for your son to see, like, look, like mommy's doing these things that matter to her. And I too, in the future, can choose to do things that matter to me.
Which is what we want for our children, isn't it?
That's what we want.
Yeah. I was, so I'm looking at your book again. So again, for anyone that is looking for more information about what we're talking about today, you should definitely check out Vivian's new best-selling book, Parenting Through Divorce. But one of the quotes you have in here, because we're talking about, being able to show up for ourselves. A lot of that comes with the fact of having to release that guilt and release that shame. And where does that come from? Self-compassion. And one of the quotes that you put in here, which I really love, if you said, if divorce is a pressure cooker, self-compassion is the release valve.
Yeah.
And I highlighted that, and I thought, what a beautiful quote. Could you speak a little bit more about how can we have self-compassion for ourselves during these times, when it's our weeks on, when it's our weeks off, when we miss that big milestone in our kid's life, or we have to miss out on a holiday?
Yeah, that's so hard. Like what you speak to, it's so hard. And I think something I say a lot now is, it's not about perfection. It's not about performance. It's about presence. So a lot of us put so much pressure on ourselves to be the perfect parent, to be there for all the things, to, let's look at the holidays. Let's just take that one example, because there's so many. So the holidays, what do? Like, we've got to make the special holiday dinner. We've got to have the family over. We've got to have all the cards. Maybe we've got to get the gifts for the teachers. Maybe we want to make a special thing for the kids. You've got the gingerbread house. You've got the cookies. Maybe it's like the special PJs and then the photography, right? Like, there's like, what does a perfect holiday look like? And yet for the kids, if you ask them, what's the perfect holiday for you? They'd be like, oh, I just want to be off school. Actually, this happened with my son. He said, I really like that it's a special time because it's so fun, because we can have fun, because it's different. And all he wants is that time together. And for him, it's like, we just go with the flow. And so I guess what I'm saying is that it's about being present to those moments and really looking and evaluating at what are all the things that we're signing ourselves up for. And it's okay to take a step back. Because a lot of times it's that pressure that leads to the guilt, that leads to the shame and blame of ourselves. Like, oh, I'm not good enough in some way. No, you're perfect. You're actually perfect. You're exactly the parent that your child needs. And they want nothing more than to have a connection with you. That's all they want. They just want a connection. Yeah.
I love that so much. I feel like I was like, you were talking straight to me. In fact, I mean, you literally are, but like, I just felt like I was like, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that. There's this total side tangent. There's this really beautiful Bluey episode. Do you know the show Bluey?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love Bluey. There's this beautiful moment in Bluey when one of the dog moms turns to, oh, I forget her name now, the mom dog, and says, "You're doing a good job." And it's that
Mm,
moment, right, where you just like feel
yeah.
like you're crying. You're like, sometimes it just helps to hear that. But you're
Yeah.
right. Like, what I heard you say there with what you're talking about with your son is what I call attunement. And so in our world, in my world, attachment, it's all about
Yeah.
attachment and authenticity. And where do we really find that balance between the two as parents in order to build up the secure attachment in our children as they get older? And the number one way that we do this is through attunement. And attunement is
Yes.
exactly what you just said there, which is each child is going to be different. Maybe some children love the traditions and love doing this. Maybe some children just want to like sit at home and do nothing but binge watch, Christmas movies with you on the couch. Maybe other ones want to go out and see Santa. And it's about
Hmm.
being able to figure out, okay, how do I tune? And we do the same thing in the work with my ladies in my program. We attune to our children, we attune to our husbands or to our partners or to whoever it is we need, realizing they have a unique set of personality needs that we get to learn and we
Yeah.
get to kind of decide like, okay, for example, let's talk about this in terms of a relationship with a husband. But let's say you're like, oh, well, I did this, and this for him when he was sick because this is what I thought he needed, when really what he needed was to just be left alone. And that's what I hear you really saying, which is finding that kind of ability to read them and to hear them and to really listen. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And that's what presence gives, is because we're slowing down. We're taking the time. We're not filling it with the things that we think that they want, but instead we're actually giving a space for them to show up, to tell us. Sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's nonverbal, but what do they want? What do they need? And all of that requires kind of a real openness and actually psychological and emotional safety on their part for us to be able to get to that point where we are able to attune with them. I think that's so
Yeah.
beautifully said, what
Oh,
you
I
said.
love that. In your
Yeah.
book, you talk about a 4-part framework that you work through. And one of them you mentioned was like permission imperfection, which is kind of what I'm hearing you say as well here, which is saying you don't have to be perfect, but like you already are, the way you said that, right? As a
Yeah.
parent, you just need to be the person, the parent, the adult, the primary caregiver that you already are to your kid. You don't need to get it perfect. Can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit
exactly.
more about what that might look like or the struggles you've seen in your own clients?
Yeah. So I think, permissioning imperfect looks like, especially in divorce, because there's a real pressure from a social perspective to stay married. And then what does a marriage look like? And then also we see the impact on our children. And likely there's going to be grief. There's going to be anxiety. The way that it shows up, maybe we see more behavior show up. And then the immediate thing that we do is, what did I do? What did I do as a parent to cause this? And I think the first thing is, you didn't do anything to cause this. The grief is normal. And, I think that's something that you said previously around, you had talked about the selfishness or the perception of selfishness, right? And that's something that for myself, even like I heard a lot. It's like, oh, it's so selfish that you're choosing yourself, you know, in the context of divorce. If you really loved your kids, wouldn't you stay married? And the thing that for me, that it took me a little to get to that point, but it's actually because I love my kids. I think I'm a better mom when I'm a happy mom. And so in terms of the permissioning, the imperfect, a lot of what comes up with the people that I work with is the sense that maybe I'm broken. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Broken marriage, broken identity, and now we're just working with the leftovers, and I'm trying to patch it all together and hold it all together. But actually, from my perspective, it's you're not broken. Just because the marriage didn't work out doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Instead, there's just something really beautiful that you're actually choosing yourself, and now you're giving yourself more expansiveness to grow into. And a lot of times, what I say a lot of my clients, many of whom are parents,
Yeah.
is that divorce is like what I've seen is it is such a metamorphosis for people, because we really are, for many, for the first time, choosing ourselves and then starting to grow into what we are becoming and into the future that we're designing for ourselves. And there's absolutely no choice but to go through that darkness, go through that anxiety, go through the difficulty and what feels like the brokenness. But in the brokenness, sometimes you have to create space to be able to bring in the new things. And I think that when we start to look at it not from a perspective of what it should be, because should is a dangerous word, should, brings in a lot of judgment, instead of go, what could it be? And I'm doing the best that I can. And I'm making the choices that feel right for me. And that is going to create this new me and this new future for me and my family that will allow for more connection, more love, more joy, because in its alignment with you. That's what makes it right. If you feel good about your decision, if you feel peaceful about your decision, that when you made that decision, it felt right Forget how you felt after conversation with so-and-so who had something to say that made you feel crappy. Like, forget that for a moment. That'll feel like shit.
Yeah, you know,
of
like
course.
Aunt Susie's always going to have an opinion
Yeah.
later, but
Yeah. Forget Aunt Susie. Yeah. But in the moment when you made that decision, or maybe the decision was made for you and that felt like crap too, right? Like, that's common.
Mhm.
But then you're leaning in and you're creating something new. That alignment and that newness is going to bring about a lot of change. And I think that when we lean into not looking for the cracks, but actually what are we going to make instead? That's what I mean when I say permission the imperfect.
Yeah. You bring up something you said earlier. You said, don't ask what you should be doing, right? Ask what you could be doing. What a powerful line. And really, what an amazing reframe. You know, just a shift in a paradigm, kind of thinking instead of what should my life look like now that I'm 40? You know, I got married very young and, you know, did the perfect little Christian Midwest lifestyle thing that I was supposed to do and got married and had all the things and had the baby. And now I'm a 40-year-old divorced woman with a trans son living in California. It's like not at all what my life thought was going to be, right? What I should.
Yeah.
What could happen, like letting go of that and really
Yeah.
seeing what could happen now through all of this when I just kind of allow it. It's been life-changing. And I think
Yeah.
so many women out there have been through these big, as you said, metamorphoses. Maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a big breakup, maybe it is a marriage that they aren't expecting it the way they thought it was going to be. And so I just really hope that they're listening and they're seeing that they're not alone and that if you have to start over, life is not over.
Life is not over.
At
And you're
all.
not starting over. You're starting
Right,
from
yes. Yeah,
a
tell
place,
me more about that.
You're starting from a place where you have all this other experience behind you already. It's not ground zero. It's actually, you're already so much ahead. You're redirecting. It's like, what is that saying they say? I think it's a Japanese saying where it's like the longer you stay on the train going the wrong direction, the more expensive the ticket to go back, right? So it's like you got off the train where, you know, like as soon as you realize you're going in the wrong direction, you got off the train, but you're actually further along because of all the experience that you now carry with you to start that new thing. And there's so much transferable skills that are in there as a result.
You know, it's
So
such
what do
a
you
good
want?
point though. Like I want to touch on that again because something I've been really trying to get across to the ladies in my program, you know, most of them are past 40, somewhere in their 50s. They've been divorced a couple times or they've had some big breakups. And it's just like, you know, how will I ever do this all over again? It took me this long to even get to where I am today. And something I'm really trying to get them to understand is like, well, it took you that long to get to where you are today because you were younger and you were a different person and you didn't
Yeah.
have life experience or tools or what we have today. But you potentially can do in a couple years what took you 10. Like honestly,
Yes.
and I've seen it happen. And that's not to
Yes.
say rush a relationship or do anything like that, but our life experience it's outstanding. Like
It's
I
outstanding.
love being a 40-year-old woman now. I just turned 41 a couple days ago and I was
Oh,
like,
happy birthday.
oh, thank you so much. And I was just like, it feels so good to just say like I'm in my 40s. Like
Yeah.
the life experience that I have today as a 40-year-old woman is so much more than even when I was 30. But imagine what that is when I'm 50 and when I'm 60 and I'm 70 and I still see women out there kicking ass at 80. We're only halfway there. And this is what I really want to showcase is it's not over. My own mother, she's like 70 something and she, you know, was married to my dad their entire lives, did the whole, 50 years together thing, and he passed away. And she never thought she'd find anyone else. And now she's happy with another guy. Like it absolutely can happen in order to just feel what it is that you want. And like you said, be in alignment with what you want. Don't get in a relationship. Just anyone who's listening, I need you to come back to me right now because I need to tell you something. Do not get into a relationship because you think that's what society expects of you.
Absolutely.
Even after a divorce, I don't give a shit if you never I don't care if you never marry ever again. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if you never move in with him. Just have a boyfriend on the side. I don't care. You shouldn't care, right? We're not doing what society wants. We're doing what's in alignment with what you want.
Yeah.
And so,
I would actually say,
please.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just gonna say there's so much advice out there of like, get out there again. How's the dating? Why aren't you, right? Like there's so much pressure to like so much advice and pressure for single people to become unsingle, as if you're missing a part of yourself that you're not complete without the other person. Especially after a divorce, my personal opinion, give yourself time. Give yourself time, especially women, like give yourself time to just settle into your own power and what it feels like to just be you, confident, beautiful, smart, intelligent, progressing, like really lean into that space and get used to what it feels like. Because I'll tell you, the moment you start dating someone and they start coming in and they start doing the shoulds and the why don't you and all that stuff, you'll know right away. Like you'll feel that it feels dissonant versus somebody that is celebrating you and lifting you up and supporting you and really being a real partner. It's so different because when you start a relationship from a place of lack and scarcity, like, oh, I need it because, and I mean like a relationship, like, date if you want to, but getting into something really serious, you'll feel it.
Yeah, well, because so many women are like, well, I'm only worthy if I'm in a relationship. I'm only somebody if I have a man to go to work parties with, even like whatever. And there's so much, discourse out there, so much of a social construct of what we are taught. And you're absolutely right. Like, we don't need to do that. And if you want to be in a secure relationship, it takes becoming secure within yourself first.
Yes.
Which brings me to wanting to talk a little bit about what we do, what we have in common. I mean, we also have the same book publisher in common, which, yes, my book will be coming out at some point in time. I know people keep asking me. I'm hoping for it to launch this fall. But both Vivian and I work with Lucky Book Publishing. But on top of that, the reason I really wanted her on here is because Vivian is a somatic coach. And I love somatic processing. In fact, we both apparently went through a similar certification course through Embody Lab. But Embody Lab is amazing. Dr. Scott Lyons is amazing. And they've done all of the work to really to bring in what helps us shift through these big, big emotions. Because I don't know about you, but I've been in therapy since I was like 17. Okay. Yeah. Like I've done the work and I was still so fucked up. I was just all over the place. It took me understanding my bodily sensations, understanding that physiological sense, that somatics inside of us to really start shifting from like the inside out. So I want to have a little bit of a conversation about that with you, because I was going through your book. You have this really great part in chapter 3 that talks about the science behind our emotions. And I want to showcase to other people that this somatic stuff works, right? This is why I want people to go and read it and listen to it from other sources. But you mention in here bringing attention to the parts of your body. And I was just wondering, is there anything that you can speak on about that, or maybe even take us through any sort of exercise you do with your clients, just to really showcase what this looks like and feels like and how powerful it is?
Yeah, it's so, that's such a great question. So oftentimes with the clients, something that they share with me is that, so first of all, actually, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back before I go there. When I first start, we do a lot of noticing. So we're just noticing the body. Most of us, especially as we get into our 40s, like we've got 40 years of conditioning to decondition. We've been taught to suppress, ignore, dissociate from in terms of our body and its feelings. And my perspective on that is that we know about our intelligence in our brains. We know about our emotional intelligence in terms of, knowing the emotions and being sensitive to them. But we don't think about the body intelligence. And the body intelligence is significant, because the body sends signals around how we are actually feeling about a certain circumstance. And oftentimes, because we ignore it, we don't get the signal. And yet, so that would be almost like if you've got your computer hard drive and you're cutting off half of it and you can't access it. That's how we're treating our bodies right now. The emotions themselves and the way the body feels, it can feel really uncomfortable. And that's why we start to shut down, especially through periods like grief. We might start to, we got to push harder, work through it, ignore it, just going to bury myself in work, distract, right? Nothing wrong with that in doses, but in the long term, it means that we start to shut down completely. And there's no valve, there's no filter. Like we can't go, I'm going to keep myself open to the ones that I like. So I'm going to be joyous and happy and receive love and be loving, while I'm going to completely shut down over here when it comes to frustration, rage, anxiety, for example. You shut down to all of it. And you really start to numb down and dull down. And that's really unfortunate. So I think that's the first thing that I would like to say about it. And in general, when I work with clients, it's about getting back in touch with the body and just noticing what it feels like to feel the body. And it can be as simple as, start from the stomach, because none of us have been deconditioned to not feel the stomach. We all get hungry. We all know when we're full. We all know that uncomfortable feeling where we get to a table and it looks so good and we eat. I mean, maybe I'm speaking for myself here, where it gets to a point where I'm like, I'm eating out of sheer greed now. Like I'm good, but that's so good. So I'm just going to keep, eating.
Yes.
So we start with it. So oftentimes, like I'll do deep breathing practices We notice the breath, we follow the breath, and then I will guide people through the different parts of the body. And then we really notice, especially in the stomach. And that can be a place to start for people who have a really hard time, because it's easier to notice. Like, do you feel that gurgle? Do you feel what it feels like to be full or hungry? And then we move to different parts of the body. Another one that is usually easier to notice is also if someone is sitting, it's like, what does your sit bones feel like right now in your chair? Really feeling the gravity of that. Do you feel like if you shift just a tiny little bit, like this feeling of that fabric against your skin, like those are the things to start with before we start perceiving. And then as we do this more and practice more, then we start to go into, okay, so now we've got something that came up. Now there's something frustrating. So especially in a divorce, it's all over us. And so, okay, let's choose the place. Maybe there's a tightness in the chest. So let's go into that tightness. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Do you notice a texture or a color associated with that? Is there one? I do this with my kids. And with children, they haven't been deconditioned. So it comes out really fast. I do think, though, they have to be a certain age. So, for example, my 6-year-old sometimes struggles with it. She's just starting to kind of get it a little bit more. Definitely as she was younger, it was a lot harder. But every child is different too. Whereas my son, who's now 10, but at 8, he was able to start doing a lot of this. So, like I think that there needs to be a little bit of age in terms of the ability and the awareness to go in to even know what mommy's talking about. But just really noticing those things. And then we start to interact with it. And some of my clients, the way that they describe that experience is it feels almost like a trance, not in a scary way, but almost like when you're in flow. So if you know what it feels like when you're in flow, where you lose track of time, where you feel so focused on something that you really want to do. For some people, it might be art, it might be reading, where you might be really into a story or a movie, right? Like you're in flow. And kind of like that moment where if someone was to come, you would kind of jump scare a little bit because you're just so focused on the thing. That's what it feels like in the body sometimes when we're doing this. And we're starting to interact with and open up those things. And some people get visions, some people smell, some people hear things. It's a whole range. Some people, it's multiple aspects, or it's different every time. Like, I think that it depends on the person, but things start to bubble up, and it's the things that the body wants to share with us. That's the best way for me to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting what comes up. I've healed some really deep things doing this, even with myself and also with clients, like people who are in recovery or, transitioning out of not just even work in terms of going into retirement, but actually are ex-military. And so really deep PTSD and, a feeling where they've been trained a certain way to not feel for so long, but still getting back then to the body and permissioning for the first time. Like, there's something there and it's okay to feel it.
Yeah, and that's the part that's so powerful of like, I absolutely remember in the beginning trying to do this work before I learned how to be certified in it and making it up because, I'd be in these groups and they'd be like, okay, where do you feel it in your body? And I'm like, I feel it in my solar plexus. I didn't know what a solar plex was, Vivian. I was just it was like, what are all these people feeling all the time? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I just want people to know that if they're out there and they're like, I don't know what this woo-woo shit is or what any of that stuff is. And it's like, no, listen, I was totally there. I had no idea what this felt like. I didn't understand anything. Here's the reason why I had been numbing myself for so long. It's either that or it was just so much. It's probably a little bit of both. That's like, I didn't understand that the reason why I didn't understand it is because I was feeling it all the fucking time. And that's it's exhausting. I was just wrapped with intrigue when I started learning. And then I started realizing oh my gosh, this pit in my stomach. In fact, I actually did this thing where I went on roller coasters to try to just feel and then I would write about it afterwards. And I'd be like, okay, my stomach flopped. That's a somatic experience.
Yeah.
If someone cut you off in traffic and you start shaking.
Like that. Yeah.
That's a somatic experience. All of those are somatic. That's just when we're really heightened. Except now it's I didn't realize this whole shaking thing that I had was just from my nervous system. And now it's it still happens sometimes, barely anymore, because it's oh, I can calm it down. And this is where it takes, right? And this is where it goes. And if I'm not mistaken, in your book, you have some links to some meditations or somatic experiences that you walk people through. Is that right?
Yeah. So
okay,
I have a guided audio where I take people through a body scan.
Yes. I think that alone is worth the cost of this book. If anyone is out there, I was just looking at it. It's some of this stuff is just so beautiful in terms of figuring out what it is that you're feeling. And again, you might just be I don't feel anything. And then all of a sudden you're oh, I feel like an itch, like on my face right there, right? Like, and you don't
Yeah.
realize that until you're like, oh, actually my back is a little bit interesting right now. Oh, my pinky toe is throbbing a little bit. This is just part of that mindful presence that you were talking about before, getting into our bodies and figuring that out. And so anyways, I just wanted to mention again, the book Parenting Through Divorce. She goes through all of this. She has these most beautiful stories with her and her children. If anyone is out there right now and they want to just learn more about somatics and they want to learn about it in a way in which you've been through a divorce, you are a parent and you need some help, this book is like just a must have. I would like buy it, and I would also give it to friends because I think it's an incredible resource to have. And as you heard, there are actual audio. Oh my gosh, what is the word I'm looking for, Vivian? You used
guided
it earlier.
Audios. Yeah,
yes, thank you. Guided audios. I was going to say audio guidance. That's not right. Guided audios for you to take this through. But as we're wrapping up here today, please let us know, how else can my listeners find you?
I'm in a lot of social channels. The best way to reach me is at Vivian Meraki on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. I make a lot of content, and also through my website, vivianmeraki.com.
Perfect. And they can grab your book on Amazon. Is that right?
That's right. Barnes & Noble carries it, and Amazon does as well.
That is fantastic. So jump onto Amazon, look up Parenting Through Divorce, Vivian Meraki, or go on Barnes & Noble. You can check it out there. Go follow her on Instagram. Her content on there is really fantastic. She's on there a lot. Vivian, you're on there a lot talking, right? Like, you're not just like posting fluff. Like, there's like a lot of amazing content. I've learned so much. I don't know about you, but if anyone else is listening and you have felt like Vivian talks directly to you, it's not just you. Like, she has a gift. You truly do, girl. Like, you really do.
Thank you.
You have this beautiful way of being able to talk. And this whole time I was even like, got so much out of it for just me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing an okay job as a parent. Thank you.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
And that's what you get when you follow her. So thank you so much, Vivian, for agreeing to come on here. I'd love to have you back sometime. I'd love to be more a part of our community. I think you are exactly who women need to be listening to right now. So if you're out there and you need a parenting coach, a parenting expert, a somatic coach, and you're looking for someone and you hear Vivian and she resonates with you, go check her out, vivianmeraki.com. It's a Vivianki. I think I said that, yes. And then go check it out, because everyone who listens to me knows how important it is that we go and find these resources from so many sources, because when we get stuck in just listening to one person, our brain atrophies in a way in which we're like not learning properly. And so I highly recommend go check her out. Is there anything last minute you'd like to say, Vivian, before we finish up here?
I think that I'd like to say that you're doing a great job, that you're not broken. And you're beautiful just the way you are. And I hope that you find the life that you design for yourself and your family.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vivian, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
This conversation. You too.